I think we're going to get started. So I want to just thank everyone for being here today. I'm Karol Weyman with Outdoor Coffee Shop, and this is our Outdoor Talk series for our outdoor, everything outdoors, really. There's a couple housekeeping. We're obviously everyone's muted, but we're open. The chat's open, so we'd love you to participate or reach out through the chat. That's an option for everybody. Just ask questions throughout, and we'll answer them. And we'll have some questions and answer at the end if you have any, because I know we're going to be very thorough in our answers. So today I would like to welcome Jeff Wells from ICP, and we're going to be talking about Super-Krete, and this is going to be just a great information on all the things that you need to know about this. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here and pretty exciting to talk about the shape of outdoor opportunities in the world of decorative.
Yes. Well, before we get started, I would love you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, why you joined ICP and Super-Krete.
First of all, I've just had a background. I can honestly say that the industry chose me, that I didn't necessarily choose the industry after being in it for 30 years. That's not exactly what I thought I was going to be growing up. But after serving on numerous boards and committees with ASCC and the Decorative Concrete Council, working with ACI and AIA and Hanley Wood, and presenting numerous times at World of Concrete, I just said, okay, I think I see my way through this. And even now at ICP and Super-Krete, I still have the opportunity to, engage in current projects. I mean, most of the time, when I first started, someone was asking me, how do you do something? Now, most people are asking me, how do I fix something? Or I've got an issue with this, or I got a problem with this. So every once in a while, you'll see me in an article, or you'll see me in some white papers or documents, are definitely just such as this at a concrete show and engagements.
Well, great. Well, thank you for being here. We're going to get started. So a lot of people are like, what is hardscaping? And like, what is required for that? So if you want to give us some information on that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So I like to break down the word itself, hardscaping. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're doing something that's not going to be like a soft, things that are soft or would be like maybe flexible roll goods or carpet or things like that. When you go into hardscaping, you're usually are, if you will, kind of your initiation becomes a picture or a concept. And what you want to do is you want to duplicate that locally, where that could be any place in the world, whether that's a certain type of rock or a certain type of fountain or some type of natural stone, or even a pattern, even geometrics, that if something that you've seen and you're saying, you know what, in my space, maybe your canvas wouldn't yield for that type of medium, but that's what you're going to be able to find out with hardscaping, utilizing these colors and texture surfaces, even around near water features. What you'll end up finding is that you can duplicate a lot of things that you've seen somewhere else and bring that same design and mimic it or scape it in the area in which you're at.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think scaling is one part of, someone will see something and think it's amazing in one area, and then you're like, well, my backyard's much smaller than that. And what's cool is that there's such a great way to be able to scale and make it appropriate for the size of your place that you're going to entertain in, or what you're going to be doing with that. So what are popular ways to have hardscaping and premium hardscapes?
Absolutely. So a lot of times, if you're saying, it's still color. What really typically marries us to that inspiration is that we're looking at something that resonated with us from a color or pattern. And then we may not know what the medium is. We might not know if it was porcelain or granite or any other type of, say, natural stone or wood. We don't know if it's oak, cherry, or whatever. All we know that there was a pattern of something that we liked, and we said, hey, we want to duplicate it. So that's where popular colors, and I see this regionally. Obviously, the Southwest has a different color, footprint than what you're going to see in maybe California or what you might see in New Mexico or even where I'm at in Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, every one of these locales have their popular colors, if you will. Also, the difference in the textures, whether the stone is more smooth, whether it's more notched, whether it's more layered, whether it's more shelled. All of these are things that takes into consideration because when it's ultimately done, it's not just a matter of the aesthetics or how something ends up looking, but it's also very important how it feels, how it feels preferably to the foot. And maybe if there's a solution based situation that we want to say, okay, we want to match color, but we're also maybe looking to say, okay, hey, we need to get water to go a certain direction, maybe away from the dwelling or away from the substrate. And then, something else is really popular is what type of systems do I have a canvas that's regular concrete, or do I need to use an overlay or a micro topping, or maybe do we need to stamp it and really change the configuration of what we're actually looking at or walking on itself?
Well, those are all good points for sure. So there's some ideal surfaces that, really lend itself to creative design. Do you want to go through some of those?
Absolutely. I always say this: any place you can walk is a canvas, whether that's interior or exterior. Or if you have an idea and if you've experienced it somewhere else, you can do this in your space. And so, one of the things I always say this great place to start is if you want to do a design feature, let's say find a walkway around your maybe a garden path or way to your backyard. Find a patio. A lot of people, when we talk about water features, the number one water feature obviously is done is a swimming pool deck. There are places and other types of decks that you walk out on. One of the things that I always say this is that when you think about outdoors, you probably have plants and shrubs and all other type of decorative motifs. So you want to build something that is conducive to that. Or if you like, you can do something that's kind of wild, kind of crazy, a little bit different from what you have. And, a lot of times what people are looking for in this design space is they want something that no one else has. They want their idea to be so creative that you can't duplicate it. And this is where you get your own individuality. This is where you get the customization to really create something that works well in your space.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because people think like they're overwhelmed by the concept of where they're going to put everything, what are they going to do? But a lot of times it starts with the walkway, and then you add the patio and the water feature. It doesn't have to all happen at one time. You can have a plan for that or not. But yeah, I think it's indicative of how we live right now is I
It
think
is, girl. And
important.
something else I really appreciate. Let's just say you think you like something, but then you don't.
Right.
How
Yeah.
many times have we really thought, wow, that looked good in the picture, but now it doesn't look so great at my place? Well, what's nice about most of the product systems that we're kind of reviewing today is if you don't like something, start over. It's minimal. If you buy a load of rock from someplace, it's going to be a little hard to start over with that. There's such an investment in that. There's not to say that there's not investment in this, but it's a lot easier to, if you will, restart and reconfigure or pivot versus utilizing some natural pieces that you're going to have to go buy all over again, or you're going to have to figure out how to dispose of. This particular, type of surface design lends itself to the oops, I don't think it's going to work for me. So that's also something else to keep in mind.
Definitely, definitely. So if someone's on the market looking, why would they pick Super-Krete Solutions?
Well, I can tell you, if you go to any of your stores where you find home improvements these days, you're seeing the prices out there. And a lot of times the cost and affordability for some of these things because they have to get them from so far away. So what's nice is that, you got one thing that can be many things. Whereas when you talk about affordability, if you go get that one thing and hopefully you'll like it. But if you didn't like it, you don't have a lot of opportunities to move away from that purchase decision. And also durability. People will say, well, hey, how long can I expect it to last? Well, with any good thing, as long as it's well maintained, and I know we'll talk about that, but our investment is as we take care of things. So durability is really much more dependent on how we treat our surfaces than it is how long, literally in years, something can be expected to last. Because even concrete over time can wear down and wear out. And it is considered one of the most durable substrates that we know. And two, customization. When you get into a lot of your customized colorants and designs, it's very hard to, unless you have something that's really flexible to allow you to pivot. So I always like to think about, I've got a transition, for example. Maybe I do have a soft substrate or soft surface or soft skate, but I want to transition from maybe the inside to the outside. I want to look the same. But guess what? If that inside medium isn't for outside, it's going to be very difficult for you to make that transition. So a lot of times what we see in that customization is that you're able to take an interior based design space and then extend that to the exterior by mimicking or hardscaping that area as well. And then there are energy impacts. I think one of the things I enjoy is that when I look at lighter floors, especially in our more of our commercial spaces and retail spaces, it offers light reflective value that's huge. A lot of places we know that with the right type of color system and the right type of sealer, they've actually been able to recess some lighting, which is an energy impact savings, that is fairly significant. Then also we look at technology, where is the next thing going? I always say, what is the perfect product? You want a product that you're going to put down that lasts forever and you never have to touch it. Well, unfortunately, no matter what substrate you purchase today, that doesn't exist. But in the forefront of advancement, one of the things that we look at is compliancy. Where if we got something, I always say this, if there's something that somebody wants out on the East Coast and you want to put it in California, these become viable options to get that result, because a lot of things may not transpose due to EPA or environmental or VOC standards. So that's the forefront of the advancement, is that piece as well. And then also too, what if the one thing you wanted is on the East Coast and you need it on the West Coast? That's the other thing. Your time to deliver, time the installation, time to get it there, the amount of freight you got to pay. These are also considerations versus the what I call the natural versus the decorative. So if I can have that look and I can have that feel, and then really be, really conscious about, number one, the environment, and number two, perhaps, the cost of materials themselves, then these solutions that Super-Krete offers, in this overlay and stain space are, very much kind of the way to go.
That sounds great. That sounds great. And now we're going to talk about some case studies or real life experiences, but we're going to start with one that's a little more fun or a little bit maybe not everyday life type of.
Well, it's so funny. I work with a lot of the studios in the design world in movies, and one of the things that they look for is that they need things to be, if you will, as hard as concrete or hard as stone to get that look without bringing a lot. Because once they're done with it, they're done, right? But when you utilize products such as stampable overlay or a overlay bond coat or even a micro topping, one of the things that was pretty exciting is that these products are a lot more forgiving than what their, if you will, their design partners are like. Concrete's typically not the most flexible thing, but a lot of the products that we work with are much harder than concrete itself. But because the fact that they're overlays, and they have special properties that make them harder than concrete, but you can handle the floating and twisting and turning of a boat that's on the seven seas, if you will. And that's where we were able to utilize this product on all the ships. There were numerous ships that they had to shoot for different scenes, and this swang and rocking, but they needed something you could set film on. They needed something that, if you were to use the natural substrate, would not have been very conducive for the way they would have made these original ships. And so we were able to utilize that. We just, our most recent, and we've done a number of these movie scenes. Probably something that's coming up here is Jumanji 4. We're actually utilizing that, creating some of the more urban and tribal scenes in that movie. So we use a lot of these products vertically as well as we use them horizontally as well.
Well, that's awesome. And although this doesn't seem like a realistic approach with the obviously Pirates of the Caribbean is a huge thing, but you could scale this down into a backyard potentially.
You could, and Carol, one of the things we talk about, things that are moving, unbeknownst to us, there are people I'm sure that are, on our, our series here that have concrete that moves. So just because, it's not a boat type of movement, we still have things that require flexibility, elongation, things that can bridge over where there would be a natural separation. One thing that's nice about such overlay products, usually if a crack has occurred in the substrate that they're on, if you ever see it, it's going to be a long time before you do, because these products have that ability to bridge to a certain extent, so that either one of two things, either going to prolong when that issue occurs, or you may not have it in the life cycle of the substrate in which you have treated.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So we're going to go on, we're moving on to something that might be a little more applicable to our, everyday types of people. But
Absolutely. And that's what I always call, there's these exciting projects that are creative, but then there's these everyday projects that need just as much creativity, they need as much inspiration, but then you get to real world functionality. How do you have and drive over a wood look, especially if the overall base of design is kind of in a maybe a wooded area, or perhaps maybe some of the substrate is actually made out of timber or logs. How do you get that over something that's going to have to take three things? Number one, vehicular traffic 7 days a week. We'll have to take all four, and if some places I understand might have 5 seasons these days, how do you do that? And last but not least, though, gives you something that can easily be maintained, but yet still look natural enough where you make your guests, or you make the people who would come by kind of have to second guess, is this real, wood, or is this real stone, and for it to really look in its more natural state. So here at the Hilton Houston here, they said, hey, we want to, in this area of the woodlands, we wanted things to look like, well, no doubt wood, right? So here was a great example of overlay product that was stamped, and it was a soft stamp, so it didn't take a whole lot to achieve this particular look. Some stamps require more heavier equipment to get the impression, but this right here was a stamp that was made for trees that were known to be in the area. So you can even take that theme, run it back to something that you're familiar with, or you can do something totally unique. But either which way, as you can see, they have to take people back and forth to the airports. There's deliveries that would have to be made. There are in Texas what I call the big truck group. That's a bit different than any other place that I've ever traveled to. That there are monster trucks, and typically monster trucks do monster damages to places, especially where they have to park. And that's what's kind of unique about this. This is not just something you're passing through. Very little damage is typically done to a substrate vehicular traffic, as long as it's passing through. But when you have to park and you have that rocking, you have that sitting, these are the types of floors and products that you're working with that's going to give you the durability that you need to be in a commercial space as well as a residential space.
Yeah, and it looks so nice. I mean, it really fits in with the architectural design. It's kind of, the architects that want it to be blended into the environment. It looks really great, and to be able to achieve that, I think is remarkable. Even if there's some big trucks, there's some big trucks
It is.
involved that might take away from the beauty of that.
Yeah.
We have another one is the Tempe Marketplace. Can you tell us a little bit about
I,
this?
I can. Tempe Marketplace really, you got to think about, this is an exterior, just to give you a little bit of background here. It's an exterior mall. So there are ways you obviously don't do an exterior mall all at one time, but you have to be able to connect it because you can't have multiple things looking different. You can't have this quilt, if you will, of a result. So one of the things that was really utilized in Tempe, they had some areas where they needed to extend their stamp pattern, and they had to add some color to some of the areas that they already had, pavers, and to give it kind of this more marquee type of look and feel. And so what they were able to do is utilize our colorant systems, our super rich stains to get more of those vivid colors. And then they also use the sealers, though, to create a very, very high traction, but very, very low slippery situation. Because, you know, you got to think slip and fall and exterior mall is pretty, you know, significant. But you can't leave it where it's unprotected because then you got to clean it. And the more porous something is and the less protected it is, the dirtier it's going to look. So it's incredible that this particular project, we did it back in 2007, and just a couple of years ago, getting on to about its 18th, 19th year, they actually redid it with just the clear. So we had the area where they had the pavers. We had this new area where they had did the stamp. The stamp was in great shape, excellent shape, and then they redid it with the sealer that was originally used. And now the thing looks like, you know, they did it at the time of installation. So this is a great example of the everyday type of exterior outdoor use that will be practical to have. I always say this: if you can withstand the traffic of a mall, then you're certainly going to be great at your home. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And the heat, when you think of the how hot the elements of Tempe get, that's not, usually there's some shaded areas, but when you're thinking of a outdoor mall that's encompassing, there's a lot of heat, a lot of
There's a
sun.
lot of heat, Carol. And if you take the Houston model too, just to jump back to that for a second, is you're dealing with humidity down there. And that's one thing that's great about these products. They're still breathable enough to handle these higher heats, and they're also can handle humidity. So, you got one opposite extreme. You got Houston, Texas right at the coast, and then you basically got Tempe, Arizona right in the middle of the desert. So,
Right. And then you have Pirates of the Caribbean was on a
and
movie
it's
that was
everywhere.
supposed to be probably
Right.
in the Caribbean, but it probably
Exactly.
might not have
And
been.
And I,
But
I think you're making actually a valuable point. I just thought about it. You have a very wet environment there. So
yeah.
a lot of times that substrate was wet. So you got to think how many hours that you're inviting moisture. Usually that's not really kind of the best idea, is to have inherent moisture sitting on any type of horizontal substrate. But it just speaks to how well this technology really, evokes that hardscape. I mean, when we say hardscape, we're talking about providing huge amount of protection, but also give you some design space in which to work.
Yeah, that's great. Great. So I'm sure it all looks good at the end, but there's got to be some key elements of a successful installation, which I'm sure you're going to talk about.
I have made it. When I first got into the business, Carol, it was all the other things that we were talking about. I seemed to spend most of my time, but as I matured, I realized these are the places where I need to spend more of the time, especially if I'm engaging with someone about a project or consulting with them about, kind of what their inspiration is. One of the things that always comes up, especially if a product does not behave or the outcome isn't what someone expected, or maybe it didn't seem to last as long as what they thought that they might get. Very rarely does it come down to the manufacturers, and people always say that. Manufacturers always say it's never their product. It's really never a product. If our product is certainly right, and most of us, we do a great job of that, but typically the compromise is the surface prep. It's either not achieving the correct surface profile, not fully removing all the things that can go wrong, because you always got to think, if you're not back to the original substrate who has to, or which has to be also treated, then you're putting your new craft on something else. And you wouldn't want to do that. It just would be like getting a new house and do nothing else but maybe, I don't know, let the wind blow it and take a broom and then start painting it. We all know what the outcome of that would be. And so sometimes this happens, unfortunately, in our horizontal surface prep. That's also very important to make sure to follow those instructions and to make sure that the next point here being have the right environment. As you can well imagine, Houston and Tempe, Arizona are probably two of the hottest places in the United States. So finding a window to do these projects is very important. We really want to make sure that if it's too hot for us to be in the sun to apply an exterior project, it's probably too hot for a product. I always say there's three types of heat, right? There's a product of the temperature, there's product of the surfaces, and the product in the, or excuse me, the temperature of the product, temperature of the substrate, and then temperature of you, what's around you. If any of those are over 100 and say 5 degrees, and it's way too hot to be putting down something, because these products, they really are applied with water as part of the carrier. So if all your water is going into the atmosphere, you're probably not going to get the result that you're going to want. The other thing too is considered your site management. Uh, have we really decided how we're going to approach the project, how we're going to either back out of the project? I've seen people get to a place and they didn't think about what their exit strategy was, and they literally, if you will, hardscape themselves into a corner. And I've seen people, yeah, I mean, you would think that you'd be thinking that, but sometimes your access path gets locked. So do you have a talk with someone that think that gate you thought was open at 4 o'clock, and all of a sudden you go a little past 5 and that gate's locked? Most of the time, site management also includes, where is your electricity? Where's your power source? Because if you have to apply product and mix and you have to take it a way far ways, product is setting up, product is going to be rigid when you try to apply it. And then also too, you got to figure out, where is the sun going to be at in any given Sunday? If you have a lot of shaded area, then obviously products are going to behave and act differently in the sun versus what they would do in the shade. And I've actually had people say, hey, I've got something that's not dry. And I'm saying, hey, did the sun ever hit it? Well, no, the sun never hit it. So it stayed wet. Everything else is also dry. And then complete systems. I know this is always the part that's tough. Sometimes you have your favorite sealer. Sometimes you have your favorite overlay. And in theory, yes, something should work. However, it's always best to stay with that manufacturer's recommended components for that system. Because if you don't know what really went wrong. And then when you come back to the manufacturer, if you have a component that's missing or you don't have something that was there, then obviously it's going to be really hard to work with them to get a resolution. Then communication. I always say this: if you communicated with the cat and dog and you got everybody else, you did great. If you miss them, you probably left somebody out, because you want to make sure that you're talking to the people on site. You want to talk to the people who are not going to be on site. I've had that happen so many times. Everybody was on the same page of the people that was there during the application, but the people that came in the evening or super early in the morning were not on the same page. The next thing you know, somebody thought it was dry. And then we have these autograph feet print, So anyway, you get that.
They just last forever. Don't worry.
They just last forever. Just put your name on it and this, ignition there. But also too, part of this communication is understanding, though, too, is when did they expect that they could get it back? I've had many times where somebody thought, without talking about their return to service, thinking, oh, well, I'll be back on this in 2 days. Well, maybe that's what the design was, but if it stayed wet or rain came, we need to look ahead, so to speak, not just the day of application installation, but what is the curing process? What is the dry times after that? So if it's going to prolong that or make it longer, then we need to let that individual who's expecting that either make other arrangements or put that into the calculus when we want to give that back to them. Last but not least is that I always recommend, please do mock-ups. please get a sample out that's bigger than 4 inches, 4 by 4, because a lot of times what happens with that is a person can have vision, but it's different. But there's a difference between having vision and then visualizing. And a lot of times that's where people they got the vision because they have the inspiration, they've got their Pinterest, they've got their whatever
Mhm.
they've seen. But the visualization though of really how this is going to look, if you don't do some type of mock-up, and I'm not saying that mock-ups are easy, especially in exposed areas, but you'd want to at least do, I'd recommend a 4 by 4 foot or a 3 foot by 5 foot board, and at least something that they can sit it on that area and really get visualization, not just the vision. Because usually our small color charts, our little bitty samples, they just give us vision, but you really want to create visualization. And then with that is setting expectations. Talk about all these different things to get, make sure that the customer is not only wanting the application or installation, but make sure they're invested. And what I mean by that, are they going to give you the space to do what you need? I mean, it's something so important they won't move something out of your way so that you can get to the edge and not make it harder you're on yourself, or create more labor, or spend so much time on trying to widget in there that some of the other floor gets compromised. Also, are they willing to work with you if things come up? Sometimes our end user, our homeowner, or our general contractor can force us to make a bad decision. We're working with things that are cementitious in nature. And I don't care what data page or product sheet that you're using, the environment is really going to dictate where you're going to come from. So I always say this, if you don't have a conversation about expectations, that means that an expectation is not going to be met.
These are all great points. And what's interesting is that this applies to the smallest of projects and the largest of projects. So it runs the gamut. But I will tell you, I know a lot of contractors that really want to please the homeowner or please somebody. So they will kind of like not have the boundaries up where they know that they're going to be compromised or they're not going to be able to provide the best value for the homeowner. So it's just really being confident and you've laid this out so perfectly for everybody to see and how important that is.
Yes, and last but not least, the fine thing is too, you typically, if someone gets a Mercedes or a Cadillac, the dealership doesn't ask them how often they're going to wash their car. So I would, part of the expectations is understanding if you're going to make a major investment in some type of hardscape, what are they going to do to maintain it? Hopefully, that's going to be a revenue opportunity extension for the original contractor. But even if not, how are you going to do it yourself? And if you can find out that person, because here's what I always say for our contractors and also we as manufacturers, there's generally a triangle, right? Two of these we can control. We can control the product. We can control the contractor. We can't control the substrate or the homeowner or the end user. So if we don't get an idea of what they plan on doing with it, besides just looking at it, living on it, being on it, then that might end up in a situation later on down the road that might not be as warm and friendly.
True, absolutely. Um, and so this talks about the longevity. This talks about kind of where we're looking, and how to have the best project longevity. So if you want to continue on
I
that.
certainly, if you think about longevity, I think the best way to sum it up is do it once, do it right. So one of the things that by doing it right is that when it comes to its time for its maintenance cycle, don't wait and see how it's going to turn out. Be ahead of it. Add a sealer, add a protector. Not everything wears in the same manner. Things typically along the edges or along the sides don't wear the same way as things going down the middle or where the heavy traffic is. So maybe there's a plan to take care of heavy traffic areas. That's not as much as doing a full reapplication. Some people say, well, it's really hard to do that, Jeff. I get this all the time. I mean, if I go in and treat the area, now guess what? The area I treated looks new and the other areas look so shabby. Well, typically what you do is you'll have it where you treat the entire area, but you give special attention to the places where you have the heavy traffic. But let them know that the ultimate thing is to catch it before it goes down, not to wait till it lacks luster and really much. It's much harder to fix and much more expensive to fix then following the manufacturer's guidelines. I understand that people love to clean things, especially if they get something on it. I think Dawn dishwashing soap and any type of dishwash detergent typically is a great thing. Even people use that on their cars. I get that. Not the best thing to use on floors and horizontal spaces. One of the reasons why I always see this end up in something preliminary or even premature expectations is because a lot of times these heavy soaps leave a little bit of a residue called surfactant. But when that dries, it becomes like glue. So everything wants to stick to that now. And so now you grew where you think it's all nice and clean after you do it. Now you start to see that, man, it didn't last as long the last time I did it. Well, you keep building this surfactant up, this soap up, and the next thing you know, it also becomes sticky. So if your car tire starts to kind of marry up with this surfactant, next thing you know, you're popping your sealer off, and now you have kind of another issue that you started. So I always look at following the manufacturer's guidelines, for longevity and tips to help that. And as we talked about, don't wait for the maintenance cycle need. See it. If it doesn't look the same, call somebody out and get prepared for it.
Yeah, great advice. Safety, safety, safety. So, what are some safety precautions to consider with a project?
Yeah. Number one, obviously, is protect the individuals around you. You want to protect them physically. You want to protect them from a standpoint of odor. You want to protect them. I always say this. I always like to protect the end user, the homeowner, from themselves, making sure that they don't get somewhere too soon. Make sure that it's okay to drive over some burlap sack just to make sure if there was something in the environment that might have extended it for a day. It's just not to rush these. There's products that are out there now, though, that from an exterior perspective, such as polyaspartics, that can be used, and they're pretty good at giving you back that space in a day or at the most the next day. But I always say this, especially when applying, make sure, number one, that if you're using any type of solvent-based product, that especially residential, that you're not near any pilot light, that you got that turned off. Horrible stories are out there for people to give that consideration. And even if you don't think it, make sure that you're properly ventilated. You may think that the window is open. That may not be enough for proper ventilation. Just don't back yourself into where you're breathing products. Water-based formulations now are stronger, and they're getting there. I know it's hard to sometimes have the same confidence in a VOC compliant product as it is in a non-VOC product, but when it comes to safety, sometimes that's really kind of the best practices. And also handling and the storage of the chemicals. One of the things we don't talk about enough is your staging area when you're setting up. I've seen people set up a little bit too close to the home when they're working an overlay. Next thing you know, they're slapping overlay all over the place where it shouldn't be going, or over into the flower bed, and even disposing, the chemicals, to make sure that we take these off site and don't put them in storm drains. Don't try to pour them out on the ground. Let's get them to a place where we know it's the proper place to do it, and kind of adhere to our local safety regulations as well. But one of the things I also like to do in the design phase, and this might be something to really consider early on in the project, is mutually exclusive conditions. So if I want something that looks like $1,000,000, that's totally shiny, super shiny, well, that can come to the compromise of it being slippery, especially if it's wet. A lot of things have the correct coefficient of friction that we need when you apply them. But later on, in a morning dew or a light rain, they become a little bit more treacherous. So, and then the other part of that is, well, if I add the anti-slip, it's not as shiny. It doesn't have that new money look. Well, this is where we have to decide. We have to make a decision here. And a lot of times people say, well, I really want I want the best protection, and I want it to look natural. Well, the best protection is something that builds a lot of film, which is typically a gloss or a semi-gloss. But what looks more natural might be a matte or a satin. or even a flat finish, in the seal coat. So those are some things that need to be taken into consideration. A lot of times too, products that look a lot more natural take longer to maybe dry or cure. Whereas some of these faster products, they won't look as natural. They're going to be all the other things. So this is where you get into really making sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to what the outcome is, but what are the mutually exclusive conditions that get me
Oh, those are great points. And if you do a high shine, you should make sure you update your insurance liability on your home.
there.
Because people are going to
Exactly.
be slipping and
It is. Or
warning.
there you go. Yeah, I give you a couple more just real quick. Another one, since you mentioned that, when you do put in a slip resistant type of medium, it's hard to clean, especially if you got to run a broom or something over it. It's going to get kind of stuck in the filter there. And also, when you want to do really, really bright colors, well, bright colors, your reds, your greens, your blues, sometimes they don't always, they're not the most favorable to to light when it comes to fading. So those are always things you want to manage as well. And because once it's underneath that sealer, it's not like you're going to be able to go back and put the color back in. So always say go, things in nature, they're generally that color for a reason. If you're not in that region where they're that color, they're probably not supposed to be that color where you're at.
That's very, very important to note. So if we're looking for the future and what we can expect from your product and Super-Krete, where are we at?
Well, obviously, faster, good, or better is really what it, and good or, we actually had to look it up to make sure it was a word, but that's kind of our mantra here is to find things that we can make faster, but we also not at the compromise of them being really good for the environment, good for the people who are going to be utilizing them. Part of the, where we want to be is to have products that, obviously are low odor, that are fantastically durable, but at the same time, that are compliant in every market space that someone wants to do a hardscape. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. And then some of the more advanced decorative concrete overlays are sometimes you want to do things on the outside, but you need a substrate to do it. So getting high durable underlayments and sometimes utilizing these underlayments by adding color, these vibrant colors where they are color fast, where they don't fade nearly as quickly or even at all. The pigment world is in a race for having these really super exterior stabilized colorant systems. So to integrate that into these overlays is the next big, holy grail for where we want to be. Obviously, environmentally friendly materials, we're going to continue to see the onslaught of VOC compliancy. So our bandwidth on the XYZ axis is continue to drive VOC, compliancy, but get products that meet that, durability, expectation that we have. And improved sealers, moving to more sealers that are in themselves shinier, but less slippery. How do you create enough surface tension in that sealer where you can get that brand new, where you wouldn't have to utilize maybe a slip resistant, type of medium. So these are all the things that are on the docket for future review.
On the roadmap coming up. So it's
Roadmap.
great. It's great to see that. And so this is important. I mean, do you have advice for some contractors out there?
Oh, I do. Get involved with your associations. There are so many people. I tell you, one of the biggest ones that I've seen a lot of success, especially for decorative, because you got to remember too that people are never buying what's in the bucket. They're not buying what's in the bag. They're not buying what's in the can. They're buying a concept. So get the concept out. A lot of people are not aware that these products really they seen them, but they don't know exactly what it is that they're seeing. So make sure you're going to your home shows. Make sure that you're going to your concrete industry network opportunities. If you're working with a supplier or a distribution partner, find out when that manufacturer of the product. I mean, we would certainly partner with anyone that was going to want to show Super-Krete, but we always like to have a retail event where we have the manufacturer and the contractor. There's nothing better to have a manufacturer and a contractor together. We even see that in the specification community. Whenever I go and give an AIA presentation, I always try to find a contractor too who's willing to go with me to answer these questions from the installation point of view, not from what a data page or some type of product sheet says to do. So that's one of the things I would say would be a successful way to go about it. Also, training events. Even if you're a contractor, there's these invitations that you can send out that are really pretty inexpensive, that you can are mailers, and just send these mailers out and let people go and kind of host at a place where you can kind of show your works, show the samples and the why. And then invest in high quality tools and materials. I always say this, you're as only as good as the tools that you use, the people that you got, and the materials that you're applying. So if you have any questions, you should certainly want to ask somebody before you appear down there, and take advantage of that manufacturer's training, and certainly any training we offer here for Super-Krete, and conduct referral programs. Don't let someone off the hook that you did great work for. That was your artistry. That was your canvas that was done. Make sure that someone else gets tied to your body of work. So always, and I always say this, don't just conduct referral programs. Utilize the maintenance cycle. Maybe instead of you having to give up revenue, maybe you're going to go back and perform a maintenance cycle for that next opportunity for the new customer, so you can grow your volume revenue that way.
Wow. Well, thank you. That is great advice for contractors. I've been looking at the chat. There doesn't seem to be any questions at this time. We're more than welcome to take any questions that we have. You are super thorough on how you handled this, so I don't really know what kind of questions people would have, but I really enjoyed our time today, Jeff. This was really, really great. So I really want to thank you for just taking the time out of your day to explain all the great things. And in your bio, you put your contact information. But if you want to if you want to just tell us it right now, that would be great.
Yeah. So it's real easy to get me. It's Jeffery dot Wells, and Jeffrey is the FREY at ICPgroup.com. So Jeffery.Wells at ICPgroup.com. And for those of you with have maybe a little bit deeper dive for something, please feel free to call me at 469-647-0582. Once again, that's 469-647-0582. And we'll certainly be glad to help you. And I'm a friend of the industry. So even if you're not using Super-Krete, certainly feel free to call. And I'm glad to be able to help you manage through any project that you might have.
Yeah, you have years of experience, so it's really worth taking advantage of. And you can also find out about ICP. They have a directory on our outdoor coffee shop, and so you're more than welcome to go there to get information as well. This is going to be available on demand within 24 hours. You're more than welcome to share it with anyone you would like to share it with. And we're otherwise it'll be on our website real soon. So thank you so much again, and thank you, Jeff, for joining us, and thank you, audience, for being here today. And enjoy your day. We'll have outdoor talk next month as well. Take care.